what does it mean to live the good life? Where do you want to go? Where should you go? What should you be aiming for? We're trying to get a sense for what you should value, okay? And what you want your ideal life to look like. And I'll give you some prompts specifically to answer this. But think about it for a second. What do you want your life to look like? Are you doing things because you're aiming for a family or a home, or what's the image of the life that you're hoping to achieve with all the things that you're working towards? I mean, when I asked for problems last class, a lot of you guys said, "Oh, I'm so busy. There's so much stuff that I'm doing, so much classwork that that's on my plate." Okay, well, why are you taking all that on? Where's it you trying to go? What's the life that you are eventually wanting from all of this? Right? Is it with family, friends? Is it a carefree life where you don't have to work? Is it a life full of fantastic possessions? I mean, what is it you want? There is the financial, career, education part of your life. There's the social, romantic part of your life. There's the family part of your life. There's your physical or psychological well-being part. There's your connection and relationship to your community. I want you to think about what you want this life to look like in 5 years. This is something that's relatively common for people to think about these, but it's also common for people not to. Why do you think it might be important to think about it? Here are a group of people whose lives changed overnight. They thought they were having or going to have the best day ever, when it turned out to be the last day they had ever experienced. Does anybody know who these people are?
Are these from I could be wrong, but the last year's Kobe O'Brien helicopter?
Oh, thank you, Mel. Yeah, all of these people were invited by Kobe Bryant, right? Was it fly in his helicopter, right? And yeah, so this is fantastic. I get to be on a private flight with this basketball superstar. I mean, they were excited to do this, and then without any warning, their lives ended. And the question is, to what extent, if our lives were to end today, would we go, yeah, I lived the life I wanted to live? I mean, for all we know, after this lecture, God hope not, after this lecture, that might be it. Stuff might happen. That be all she wrote. Is the life you are currently living, the way you're living it, the way you want it to be lived? It's a question of values. We often don't think carefully about what we do, right? We're not often conscious of the reasons why we do something. And even if there are alternatives, is there an alternative path for me? Is there another career choice? Is there something else I should want in life? So that's our question for the first few minutes together, is what should you value in life? I mean, let's take just a basic question and be brutally honest. I mean, why did you sign up for this class? And I'm not going to get offended. I need credits. Why do you need it, Adrian? Requirement. Fine arts requirement. Recommended by a counselor. Seemed interesting. Credit. Seemed interesting. Counselor recommended. Transfer requirement. I need the humanities requirement. Requirement. Why do you care about meeting what requirement are you meeting? Who's making you do this? Karina says major. Is that where most of us are? Universities, school. Why do you care about school and universities? Adrian says to get a good job. Why do you care about a good job? Adrian says money. This is the question that philosophers have been thinking about for a very, very long time. Not the question of why they should sign up for Hume 1, but why should you do anything? Why should you care about money? Why do you think security is even a good thing? Couldn't you imagine a way of justifying insecurity as kind of a worthwhile thing? Couldn't you imagine a decent life without money? Because there are a lot of people who actually would say, I'm happy and have a good life even without money. This is the question that was famously tackled by Aristotle. Okay, have this in your notes. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher. I'm not going to ever test you on dates, but notice the time period. Right? So this is before Christ, because we're talking about the Western world here. So before Christ, Aristotle was a student of another famous philosopher, Plato, who you'll be reading for next class. But Aristotle tackled this question, right? He wrote this famous book or a treatise called Nicomachean Ethics. And in it, he talks about what the human life should be about, right? What we should want out of it. And he looks at people and sees their behavior, right? So let's just imagine this for a second. When we watch people and we see how they spend their time, what are they doing? Because that tells you where they think meaning is, what they think is valuable. Aristotle looks at all these people that are concerned with all of these different things, like we see in our society. And he says, you know what? Some actions aim at instrumental goods. Some actions aim at instrumental goods. Now, what he means by that is a lot of the things we do, we're not doing it just for its own sake, but we're doing it as an instrument to get us somewhere else. Just like you taking this class, just like you doing the quiz at the end of the week, just like you doing the homework assignment. I mean, those, for a lot of you, those are instrumental goods. You probably don't get great passion out of doing homework assignments naturally. I mean, if they weren't assigned in a class, you probably wouldn't be looking for them, right? So they're instrumental goods. They're leading us somewhere. We do it to get us someplace. Aristotle is going to believe that's the same thing with a lot of stuff most of us do. Shopping, or getting a house, getting a car. To Aristotle, a lot of that is going to be an instrumental good. Those are things that we are using to get someplace else. Those aren't really the thing in itself that we want. For Aristotle, his philosophy is that there is an ultimate end, meaning there is an ultimate good. There is the good through which all of our actions are trying to lead us to. I'll say that one more time. For Aristotle, he believes that there is an ultimate end. Not everybody believes this, right? But Aristotle does, that there is an ultimate good that all of our actions are really trying to get us to. So when you shop, when you work hard at school, when you work hard at work, all of those things, you probably aren't necessarily doing it for its own sake. You're probably doing it because you think it leads you to somewhere else. So what's that somewhere else? Aristotle says, I don't think it's pleasure. I don't think the thing that everything is leading us towards that we really want is enjoyment or pleasure. Why not? What do you guys think? Why wouldn't pleasure and just feeling good be the ultimate end, the thing that we should really value above everything else? Why not just eat ice cream every day and eat pizza every day and get drunk every day? Andrea says pleasure is fleeting, so it doesn't last long. I mean, that's kind of what Aristotle said too, right? It's transient. That can't be it. I mean, that can't be the ultimate end because that doesn't last, right? You can't feel good all the time. Good. I love the responses in the chat. Some of us say it's honor, right? It's status. But Aristotle goes, no, I don't think so. I don't think the ultimate end is honor or status. Why not? Why isn't honor or status? Where does honor or status come from? Andrea says status doesn't come from within yourself. Where does it come from? Others. So Aristotle goes, it can't be it. It can't be it. Because there are a lot of people that live not necessarily amongst other people, yet, they seem to be on the right track in life. It can't be dependent on other people, right? It's not self-sufficient. That's Aristotle's language. It's not self-sufficient. Some of you pointed out it's not from within yourself. It's kind of all on the same lines there. Well, what about money? Oh, I bet you I bet you if we wrote down, if we did a survey about what would make you happy, I bet you everybody would be like, if I could just win the lottery, if I could just get that super high paying job, oh, the money. But even this, Aristotle said, no, it's not the money. Why not? Right? Money is something that gets you something else. So there's no way that's the ultimate good, just by definition. Right? Money is something that gets you someplace else. It gets you something. Plus, as Angel writes, who even said that money is valuable? We defined it to be valuable, didn't we? We're the ones who came up with the idea. We're the ones who printed out pieces of paper and said, this is worth something. Pieces of paper, like what we have with dollar bills, isn't inherently worth $5, $10, 12. I mean, that's just stuff that we came up with, right? We defined it. Plus, take a look at a bunch of rich people. If you do surveys with people who have lots and lots of money, you're going to find some really interesting results when it comes to their quality of life. It's not what you think. So Aristotle says it's none of these. What is it that we want with all of these things? Where is it we want to go with all that we do? He says the following: the ultimate end seems to be eudaimonia. So highlight, underline that word in front of you, eudaimonia. The ultimate end, says Aristotle, seems to be eudaimonia. So the you part refers to positive, yeah? And the word in the middle is daemon or demon. That refers to like a spirit, right? So it's positive spirits. In English, we use the word happiness. For Aristotle, he says, whatever you do, going to school, going to work, making sure your kids are okay, making sure your parents are treated well, fighting for justice. He says all of that is trying to create happiness. The kicker now is going to be what he means by happiness. Because he doesn't mean just feeling good. Remember, he said pleasure. No, not pleasure. Here is what he says about eudaimonia. Here's what he says about happiness. Happiness is activity of the soul in accordance with perfect virtue. The key thing to first remember is that this isn't describing how to get happiness. He's not describing what to do to become happy. No, he's describing what it is to be happy. So the first thing you should put in your notes and identify is that happiness for Aristotle is not a feeling. For Aristotle, happiness isn't about feeling a certain way or even having a certain mindset. For Aristotle, happiness is something you do. So everything that we do in life is to get to a state of doing something else. What's that something else? For Aristotle, it's an activity of the soul. Now, we can get tripped up with soul, right? Because if we live in a modern Western world, we might envision, I don't know, Casper the Friendly Ghost. But that's not what he meant by soul. So we need to dissect that. What does he mean by activity of the soul? And what does he mean by in accordance with perfect virtue? For a lot of us, when we think of virtue, we might think of ethics and morality, right? What's the morally right thing to do? Kind of related, not exactly what he's pointing to. Activity of the soul. The way people often interpret that part of the quote, I mean, think about a plant. Is it possible for the plant to have an activity of the soul? In this sense, maybe, yeah, right? If we take Andrea's sense, it's to do something based off of what it's supposed to do, what it's intended to do, like who it or what it actually is, right? So in this sense, sure, a plant can have an activity of the soul. And in this way, what Aristotle might be pointing to is about fulfilling your potential, right? Being true to who you are and who you can be. I mean, think about a seed, right? A seed, when we say, well, how do you relate activity of the soul to a seed? Well, the seed is meant to sprout, it's meant to grow. It's meant to fulfill its potential to be a flower or a tree or whatever it is. So another way of thinking about what activity of the soul means is it might mean to flourish, right? To fulfill one's personal potentials and to flourish. When we take a look at a plant, we can say, oh, that plant is flourishing, and then take a look at another one and go, oh, that is not. Well, what's the difference? One plant's like withering, dying. It's not fulfilling its potential, while the other one is. So this is maybe the most common way people have tried to understand Aristotle when he says activity of the soul. It's acting in fulfillment of your full potential. It's you living in a way that you flourish by fulfilling your potentials. If we take a look at something like a musical instrument, what would it mean for a musical instrument to flourish? I mean, you take a look at what an instrument is for, it's to be played, to make music. So for a flute to flourish, it's for it to make music, right? So you have to get a sense for what its purpose is, right? What makes it more unique than other things? I mean, a knife, for a knife to flourish, it would be necessarily to make music. But maybe it can, right? But it's not necessarily to make music. The thing that makes the instrument different is that its intention is to make music. How about a knife then? What would it mean for a knife to flourish? Well, you have to ask about its purpose. To cut, right? If the knife is supposed to be something that cuts stuff, well, then to fulfill its potential is to cut, but not just to cut any old way. It's to cut well, right? So the question that you should start to think about, we're not going to answer it right now, right? This is a whole 12 weeks together, is what does it mean for a human to flourish? What is it that makes humans different than the cow and the flower and the flute? What is it that makes us unique? That if we are aligned with it, right? If we can figure out what it is, then that's what it would mean to flourish. Okay, that's something you should be thinking about. Second part of the quote, virtues. Now, I can see why we think about this in terms of ethics and morals, and maybe if we have time, I'll explain to you the relationship. But the Greek word that's used there by Aristotle is arete, A-R-E-T-E, arete. And what that is literally translated into is traits that allow us to be excellent. Virtues are characteristics, traits that you have that allow you to be excellent. So maybe you can see how that's related to ethics, right? Because ethics is about doing, about acting properly in the world. And if you have the right ethics, if you develop the right sense of right and wrong, maybe that allows you to be excellent in the world. But in a more general sense, it's not necessarily about ethics and morality. It's just about traits that allow you to be excellent, to function well. Okay, so if we take a look at the flourishing knife, and we know that for a knife to flourish, it should cut, right? It should cut well. Oh man, look at this knife. Do you have one of these? Like my partner has this awesome knife that cuts like super well. We just love it. So we're cutting it. Oh, we should use it for the steak. Oh, we should use it for the vegetables. Like it's flourishing because we're able to use it, lots of different stuff. What is the trait that allows the knife to be excellent? Sharpness, right? Says Andrea. It's sharpness. It's the sharpness of the blade, not just the blade. It's the sharpness of the blade. So sharpness is the characteristic that we call a virtue in this case, right? Sharpness is the characteristic of the knife that allows it to be excellent. So the obvious question that we'll be trying to delve into for the next 12 weeks is, what virtue should we have? What are the characteristics of being human that will allow us to be excellent in the world? So as we start to take a look at all of these creative people in our class, all these people that have impacted the world for the better, that have changed it, that have brought something new to it, that people look up to, one of the things we want to look at is, well, what were the characteristics that they all possessed? What were the characteristics that they fine-tuned, that they had in abundance, that allowed them to be excellent?